Hi everyone, and welcome to our Bestmed Wellness Program. This week we've got the esteemed privilege of having Warren Germishuizen with us, aka the Mad Scientist. I am super excited to host this podcast, and I've got a lot of questions. Warren, thank you so much for joining us. I know that you've got probably about 25 years of experience in the fitness and wellness industry, and it's my privilege to interview you today. Welcome. And just tell us a bit how your fitness journey started.
Thank you very much, Quibus. And once again, thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to having this discussion with you and perhaps giving some people information out there that they haven't currently got already. So my fitness industry started about 97 when I was in matric. I did my PT certificate in matric, my diploma, wanting to do PT after that while studying at university. First did graphic design for 3 years, worked in the industry for 6 months, and then decided, no, I'm not going to do this. I want to go into something a little bit more medical. I then decided to do some chiropractic studies, which I then went to UJ. I was there for about 5 years. Unfortunately, my dad passed away in my 5th year, and that kind of broke me down quite a lot. So I took about a year or two off from chiropractic studies. And then in those 2 years, I actually realized that, fitness and wellness is really where my passion lies. I then, since then, I've done as much research and intensive research I possibly can on wellness due to the fact that my dad passed away at such a young age at 56 on the 8th of September, which coincidentally coincides with my grandfather's passing at 56 on the 8th of September, 25 years apart. Same day. So for me, it became quite important for me to understand the dynamics of heart attack, why it happens, and trying to not have that unfortunate incident happen to me at the age of 56. So after doing that, having all my clients that I already currently trained and the information that I had applied as much as I possibly could of that, bringing their cholesterol levels down, improving their health. And it's so measurable because we can do bloods and we can actually get the output there and see if it's actually helping, with a certain exercise or eating pattern is lowering cholesterol, improving health, improving liver, and all those type of things. And we actually got some really good results. And I decided that's actually what I want to pursue. And that's where I am today. And that's why the people call me the mad scientist, because I think I do more research than anybody else I possibly know. And I really enjoy it. And it's wonderful to find out that, even though I hadn't completed my chiropractic studies, that there is still a field in which I am able to help people and assist people in achieving their health and their wellness and potentially helping them live longer.
Well, I think you've definitely done that, by building up this huge reputation. When people speak about the mad scientist, everybody knows Warren Germishuizen, which is awesome. And I have heard all these, all these jargon words, and it just flows off your tongue with ease because obviously you've read up so much, you've researched so much, and the knowledge is so much. And with regards to the and obviously with the industry that you're involved with. So I think let's just start with just the client journey. When a client does approach you, how do you assess a new client's wellness needs beyond their fitness goals and all of that? So new client pitches up. Is it just about the physical? Is it about, how do you sort of set those goals, at the end of the day?
Well, first objective, I think, is to try to establish the type of lifestyle that they have been living. So find out how they've been eating, have they been training, what the level of activity is during the day. Do they smoke? What's their alcohol intake like? Because these are all things that are a reality today. So working with that and trying to establish, what the kind of damage is that they've caused and what they're currently doing to actually improve their health, and then what their goals are moving forward and what we can potentially do to help them change their lifestyles, because their current lifestyle of, let's say, 10 or 15 years of living really, really bad lifestyle gets them into the situation that they are currently in, whether it be mental, physical, or the health itself, So from that point, trying to explain to them that X amount of time getting them to that disaster is going to take an X amount of time getting them out of it. So once they obviously understand that and the reality kicks in, it becomes a lot easier to work with that person.
So you basically need to try and reverse the damage that they've done. So would you say if you've smoked now for 10 years, is it going to take you 10 years to try and reverse that damage on the body?
So fortunately, not when it comes to smoking. There's an exponential decrease in risk once you stop smoking. So the sooner you start, the better it is. And it's definitely not going to take you 10 years to reverse it. It actually starts the minute you stop. So that is quite good. It will be quite nice about it.
That's good news.
Yeah,
That's good news. Excellent. Yeah, no, excellent. What are the first conversations you typically have with your clients who wants to feel better and live longer, sort of thing?
So I think the easiest thing is for me is that most people that approach me or they come to me are already in a mindset of improving their lifestyles, getting fitter, getting healthier. So it becomes a lot easier to work with somebody that's prepared to make changes in their life. So the first thing I try and implement is that they need to increase their muscle tissue, because that's the number one organ system in the body that determines how long you're going to live. It's actually, the organ of longevity. And then second to that would be cardiovascular strength to get the VO2 max up, and then also their eating habits. So those are generally the three elements that I work on first. And
So it's the mental aspect, the physical aspect, and then the nutritional aspect, nutritional component.
yeah, and how easy it's going to be to get somebody to adapt to the new transformation also determines on how bad they've been in the past. So some people might take 2 to 3 months, and other people might be able to go from the start and have their mindsets already kick in. And then some people deviate off the path and we have to get them back on again, which is probably 90% of the cases. And then other people are just really mindset strong from the start.
So they're quite motivated from the start. But yes, obviously,
And they're few and far between. But, that's why you get a coach, and that's why you get somebody to help you so that you can be accountable to somebody. I run an app so I can see what they're doing every single day. If they haven't got sleep, it's on the app. If they haven't trained hard because their strength is compromised, that's on the app. Their water intake's on the app. Their sleep is on the app. So I can track them on a daily basis. So it becomes quite accountable to me, and the clients actually enjoy that quite a lot.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, you're keeping them accountable for their decisions and trying to obviously track and monitor all the bad decisions and steer them to the good side, which is excellent. Yeah. Which is obviously where your role comes in as the coach, which is awesome. Excellent. What's the biggest mindset shift you try to install in people starting out with their wellness journey? What's the biggest mind shift? I don't know if that sort of links into what you've already know.
Yes, definitely. I think it's the lifestyle itself. I think the mindset that is established in an individual has often been caused by the lifestyle that they've led. So to make them understand that the lifestyle has to change to get to certain results and keep it there, that's probably the strongest driving factor in having to change mindset, because it's the lifestyle that got them overweight. And it's the new lifestyle that's going to get them to lose weight. But then once they've lost the weight, they can't go back to the old lifestyle, because otherwise they're just going to end up in the same position again. So it's making them understand that this is where your mindset is. Things are going to change, and things are pretty much going to stay changed moving forward, because what we did in the past is what got you here in the first place. So that's quite...
And is it a hard sell also? It's probably a hard sell to clients just to explain to them, listen, there's going to be pain. There's going to be days that you don't want to do things. There's going to be days that you don't want to pitch up for gym. You don't want to exercise. Is it it's a hard sell. Are you selling to them, listen, this is what you're going to possibly look like in the next year or 5 years and things. And this is what you're going to feel like at the end of the day.
So I think also it depends on what their current health status is. So somebody that's had cardiac arrest and come out of heart surgery, they're a little bit motivated to stick to the lifestyle. Somebody that's pre-diabetic and they know that there's an issue there, they could become diabetic, they pretty much going to stick and stay to that. But somebody that just wants to change their lifestyle, be a little bit healthier, sometimes you do get that it's difficult to keep them on the path. But I think when somebody knows that they're unhealthy and they have to kind of do this because this is what they're going to have to do unless they want to have problems going forward, then it's easier to work with them because they really do stick to the program.
So the people that pitch up that you see as on a daily basis, where are they on the spectrum? Are they like literally, listen, my doctor said I've got high cholesterol, I've got a health issue here. They need to take drastic steps. Is that when they pitch up, or is it just literally, listen, I wanna feel good, look good, feel better, And that's, where in the spectrum do the clients normally, come and see you at the end of the day?
Yeah,
Is
so
it overall?
they approach me more on the I want to look good and feel better and be healthier.
Yeah.
And I take them on board. I do my assessments with them. And then in the assessments, I'll determine whether why they're not feeling good might be because of X amounts of problems. Could be either cholesterol, blood pressure, could be diabetes, could be anything really. So that we kind of determine in the actual session itself. And I'd say about 50% of my clients are actually fine. And then the other 50%, they might have a bit of blood pressure, they might be pre-diabetic. And a lot of them also, it's just muscle wasting, because they're getting a little bit older now. So the sarcopenia that kicks in, this is why they're feeling a little sore when they wake up in the mornings, and they're sore under their feet. And when they're walking upstairs, it's sore. So you explain to them, look, by the time you hit 50, 55, sarcopenia is a major reality that you're going to deal with, where your body is just automatically breaking muscle down, getting older. So having that mind shift of we need to now put on muscle and grow that muscle so that we don't lose anymore, and help you feel stronger during the day. So doing movement patterns like squats, everything that helps increase grip strength, increases VO2 max. Once you start applying that, and after about 8 to 10 weeks, they can say really that they're getting massive amounts of change in their lifestyle, walking up and down stairs, getting in and out of cars, which to me is something ridiculous because I've never come across that, but it is a reality. And some people out there that haven't trained because perhaps their corporate lifestyle's taken over, they've been busy, they've neglected their bodies. The bodies start knocking on the door and say, hey, you need to watch,
Yes, it's actually small movements that you don't actually think of. Just standing up from a couch, standing up from, watching TV, all those things. And those are the exercises, as you mentioned, now that we need to focus on. Squats, reaching up cupboards, gripping things, all those things we tend to lose as we get older, which is obviously important to train.
So the three most important elements when it comes to longevity and living into an old age with quality is leg strength, grip strength, VO2 max. Those are the three important variables to work on. And once that is in place and you've worked on that, you have a much greater probability of having a longer life, firstly, and a better quality of life too. So potential fall could be guarded by a catch onto a pillar or onto a wall with good grip strength and quads activating, kicking and preventing that fall. If you don't have that, the fall takes place, have a broken pelvis, and obviously we know what the detrimental and deleterious health effects are with that moving forward. Yeah.
Okay, no, that's excellent. Yeah, I think you've actually answered a few of my questions now. Yeah. But what's your advice to clients in their 30s and 40s who want to future-proof their bodies?
Okay, so as I mentioned, building muscle tissue. That's going to be the number one thing to, future-proof your future, or future guard your future, making sure that you're strong. Also, when you have a lot more muscle tissue, there's more place to put your blood in, your sugar in, so once there's enough glycogen storage to put your sugar in, you're not going to have an elevated blood sugar. So we'll see people that do suffer from sarcopenia and that do lose muscle, that their blood sugar automatically increases because now there's less storage capacity to store the glucose, so when you're building a lot more muscle tissue, especially people that are pre-diabetic and that maybe fall between a 5.6 and a 6.5 range, when they do improve their muscle tissue and they do have greater amounts of storage units, their blood sugar automatically comes down, so over and above that, the strength that it allows you to have too. Again, we discussed quads, grip strength, and all of that. So I would say definitely just work on building up that muscle tissue. And second to that, you want to make sure that your respiratory capacity is good as well. So you want to make sure you're doing your HIIT training 2-3 times a week. You're doing your zone 2 cardio to make sure that you're keeping body fat down, and also to prevent as much or as little visceral fat of building up too. I think is also extremely important, because that's where your insulin resistance is going to start. So if you can avoid that from happening in the first place at a younger age, you're going to be good to go moving forward.
That's excellent. You mentioned your assessment. What do you normally, so you've mentioned now also grip strength, and you look at mental components, nutritional, physical, and what do you normally assess with your clients in terms of just take me just the normal process? Client pitches up, you've got like a checklist, maybe nutritional wise, you test their body composition, the muscle mass, the body fat. Is there anything else that you usually look at also?
Okay, so obviously I have two types of clients. I've got competitive athletes that compete in shows and stuff like that, so bodybuilding, bikini athletes, and I've got the normal lifestyle athletes, wellness clients. We're referring to those, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so they'll generally come in and we'll do our assessment starting with their lifestyle assessment. So we'll listen to what it is that they do, waking up and then going to bed, how they eat, how much sleep they're getting in, how much water they're getting in. And then from there, yes, we determine body fats, muscle tissue, visceral fats. So I've got a machine that does that here, so that's pretty easy for us. And then,
And what's the fat range that you're aiming for?
it depends on the individual. So for females,
Depends on how good they want to look.
no, not necessarily. I mean, some people are just happy being in a certain fat percentage range, irrespective of what they look like, because they just don't want to be that fat anymore or overweight anymore. So if somebody's 37% or 38% body fat, they said, listen, I'm even happy just getting down to 20. And it'll be irrespective of what they look like. They'll just be happy being there. So that's one thing. But we do visual assessments too. So I do a 6 profile checking photos where we do front profile, side profile, inside profile with elevated arms on both sides, and then a rear photo too. So
so before and after photos.
Yeah,
obviously a lot of times the measurements don't portray what's actually changed in your body.
100%, especially on the scale, which is probably the most incorrect way of determining what your results are. And then from the photos, we do that every 21 days. And often, as we say, the scale doesn't say much, but then you look at the photos and you can see a distinct difference, firstly. And then secondly, they're falling off their clothes are just falling out of them, as their sizes get a lot smaller. So that's why I do the visual assessment too. And then we've obviously got the measurables on the in-body machine as well.
No, it's excellent. Yeah. Okay, and then suggestively, how much would you say must the person train per week? Is it 7 days a week? Is it 3 days a week?
Yeah, so be goal orientated in what that person wants to achieve. So if they're getting ready for, let's say, August, they now want to get ready for the beach, that'll be a certain amount of training. So normally a max training for my wellness lifestyle would be 5. And then a minimum would be 3, depending on the client itself, how busy they are, how much time they can allocate to the gym. If somebody can only allocate 3 days a week going to the gym itself, then that's the amount of weight training sessions I do. I do suggest that they do cardiovascular training every single day, zone 2, and I do prefer they do it faster on an empty stomach, no less than 40 minutes, and then about 30 minutes after that, getting 30 grams of protein in. I think that is a great tool to control weight and make sure that you're not gaining any more weight. And I've even seen that type of approach bring down visceral fat tremendously, because for every 3% I think body fat that you lose 1% visceral fat. So it really is important to try and bring that weight down in the first place. Irrespective of what you look like, it's healthy for you to be in a healthier range. And for an active male, I'll say anything between 15 and 20. And then for an active female, anything from between 17 and 23.
For active female?
For active females, yeah.
And then just for our listeners, you mentioned the cardiovascular level 2. What do you mean by that?
So in the fitness industry, we have a number that we work with when we talk about cardiovascular training, and it's 220. So if you want to train at a high intensity,
220 is your heart rate.
It's not your heart rate. It's just a number that they give you when you start working out your maximum heart rates for a certain exercise. Let's say you do. So now we want to burn fat specifically, because I'm sure that's what a lot of your listeners want to do. So with that, you want to train at about 63 to 65% of your maximum heart rate. So you take that 220 and you minus your age. So let's say I'm 40 years old. It's 220 minus your age, that's 180. So 180 is your 100% max heart rate. To get your heart rate there is very, very difficult, and you also don't want to keep your heart rate there because it's not safe. But that is your 100%. So you'll work out 40% of that. You'll times that with 0.65, which is 65. And let's say that works out to about 118 beats per minute. And that could be your 65% of your max. Ideal fat burn zone, I make it 63% according to bodybuilding.com. But then you'll know, okay, cool. Zone 2 cardio is that 65%. So when I say we're doing zone 2 cardio, you work that out, or I'll work that out for you, and I'll tell you in which range I want that heart rate.
And that you'll do them what? Once a week, you said?
Every day.
Every day
they'll do the zone 2 cardio.
Yeah. And then for how long?
40 minutes. Yeah.
Okay.
No less than 40 minutes. First thing in the morning on an empty stomach, if they can. If not, I try and get that in any other time during the day. And then I also incorporate HIIT training, which would be twice a week. The HIIT training would be 20 minutes only, and you would do intervals of 30 seconds. So it's a 30-second sprint, 30 seconds rest, 30-second sprint, and a 30-second rest. There's so many benefits to that. I don't think it's the best tool for fat burn. I think zone 2 cardio is still better, but there is the cardiovascular strength and fitness aspect of HIIT training that you can get that you can't get from zone 2 cardio. So your lungs will be a lot stronger, your vascular system will be a lot stronger, and you don't have to do it for longer than 20 minutes, because once you've done that type of HIIT training for 20 minutes, there's a system that you activate called EPOC. So it's called excessive post-exercise oxygen consumption. And that will allow you to burn body fat for up to 24 hours, slowly but surely throughout that time period. And whether you do HIIT for 20 or 30 or 40, irrespective, once you hit 20, you've enabled EPOC, and then you don't have to do anything more. So I do that twice a week, and I actually found that with my females, especially premenopausal, post and menopausal females as well, bringing that HIIT training in allows them to start losing body fat quite a lot. And they normally stick, with the zone 2. They find it very, very hard. But if I incorporate just 2 sessions of the EPOC or the HIIT training,
the interval
training twice a week with them, then they start losing. Like crazy losing. I just had a client compete now on the weekend. She's 50 years old. She lost 13% body fat when she was struggling before she met me. She couldn't even lose like 1%. So just by bringing that in was a massive shift.
And currently you're saying twice a week?
Twice a week, yeah. I don't even...
So apart from your weight training, your gym training still? Or?
Yes, yeah. So generally the clients will either do weight training in the morning followed by their cardio, and then twice a week they'll go in the afternoons and do 2 hits, or they'll do their cardio in the morning and then do their weights in the evening, and then twice a week they'll follow they'll do the hit after 2 of those weight sessions during the week.
Sure, that's excellent. So how do you approach mobility and flexibility for clients who are stiff, sedentary, and recovering from injury? What do you do any, because I'm just hearing exercise, gym. Is there any mobility exercise or stretching or?
Yeah, so for me, I generally, as much as I can do in the gym, I don't generally like touching my clients. So I will make sure that they are in a full range of motion, going completely eccentric and in concentric movements as well, making sure they're reaching both of those lengths as much as they possibly can. And then there's a place down the road called Stretch. So I just send the guys there and they go for a stretch class or a stretch session actually with a stretch therapist. And that helps them with mobility and stuff like that. Other than that, I'll give them a stretching routine, which they can follow on the app itself. They see how the exercises are done, and then they follow that.
No, that's excellent. So obviously that's important for injury prevention and making sure that you get a proper training session in, because obviously you don't want limitations in your movement, because then you're not going to get that full effect when doing the contractions.
Yeah,
it's excellent. So what are the most common fitness mistakes you see that actually accelerate wear and tear in the bodies?
Okay, so firstly, load. So mechanical tension that far exceeds the person's probability of doing it with correct movement pattern.
So too much too soon, usually, or?
Not necessarily too much too soon. I mean, I've got guys coming in, especially like the school kids. They'll come in, they'll see who can push heavier than the next person. Some of them have been training for a year or 2 years, but they're still trying to out-press, their counterparts. But they do it with the worst form ever. So firstly, overload, mechanical tension that's way too heavy for what they should be doing. And you can pick that up by seeing what the movement pattern's like and whether they're doing it correctly. And most of the time, it's partial reps, it's not done correctly, and it's also not done under proper breathing circumstances as well. And that could also lead to injury. But yeah, I see that quite a lot in the gym.
That's very, very interesting, actually. So you often say wellness doesn't start and end in the gym. What do you mean by that?
Well, I think a healthy lifestyle and wellness doesn't just come with how you look. It is actually about how you feel, how healthy you are. I mean, I've seen guys that look great, coming from other coaches, having gone tremendously terrible protocols with them. And then when I do their bloods and stuff, they're actually on borderline heart attack, So I think wellness is also, how healthy are you inside, and not just how healthy are you on the outside, or how healthy do you look on the outside, but how is your body functioning and how do you experience life? Do you wake up life feeling healthy, or do you actually feel sick during the day?
Yeah, no, that's excellent. Um, so what's your take on walking, standing desks? Do they actually make a real difference? Is it, is walking also beneficial, or is it just, what's your view on that?
Look, I love walking. Most of my cardio gets done on the treadmill itself. It's a very natural movement, and also you can change up your speed, you can change up the incline, when it comes to the treadmill. Daily walking also depends on what type of walking you're referring to, so is this exercise activity that you're talking about, or is this non-exercise activity that you're talking about? Is it walking on the treadmill during a session, or is this walking just?
I think just walking in general. Also,
okay. So when you're working out your maintenance calories, which is the amount of calories that you need during the day, you'll work out your BMR, which is your basal metabolic rate. But then there's three other factors as well. There's the thermic effect of food. There's non-exercise activity thermogenesis, which is what that walking is, moving around during the day. And then there's exercise activity thermogenesis, which is your actual training. So by that being said alone, determining maintenance by using non-exercise activity thermogenesis would tell you that it's extremely important, because you actually determine your maintenance calories with that. So whether you quickly going to the bathroom, whether you're parking a bit further away from the shopping centers and you have to work a little bit more, when you're using the stairs rather than the elevator, all of that non-exercise activity thermogenesis still determines your overall maintenance calories. So it's extremely important. So if you increase that, you'll definitely be able to improve your life and your wellness.
Okay, as I say, this is also now a bit of a left field question. Yeah, standing desks. What do you think about it? Must people be sitting on balls? Must they be standing at desks? What's your thought? I know it's a bit of a different question now.
No, not at all. So they say, sitting is the new smoking.
Yeah,
that's the jargon out there, so it goes to show it's not really that healthy to be sitting all day. We're not designed that way. Certainly going to tighten up a lot of your muscles, hip flexors, hamstrings, all that. And everybody that sits all day will know about this. So being able to stand now and then by your desk is probably one of the best things that you could do.
Would you suggest standing for 8 hours?
No, not 8 hours, but I'll definitely swap them around, just maybe sit for half an hour, stand for. I certainly do that, at the gym itself. Fortunately, I have a track around my weight section, which is about 100 meters. So what I do is every 45 minutes, my alarm goes off, my phone goes off, says, keep up and get going. So I get up, I do 5 laps, which is 1,000 steps on the track. I go downstairs and I start working straight away. So for me, I do break that up a little bit. It does take a lot of pressure off the hip flexors, the hamstrings, and they don't tighten up as often. So I think if you can stand at a desk and alternate between sitting and standing during the day, I do think it will have its benefits.
Yes, excellent. I think let's start delving a bit into the supplement side. Before we started, we spoke a little bit about creatine and all of that. Must you be taking creatine with every session? What's the benefits of creatine? What is your experience behind it, or your thought behind it?
Okay, so the latest research that we have is that creatine is not just good for the muscles, it's good for the brain as well. So it's good for brain development, it's good for cognitive function. So you're not just taking it because of the muscle tissue, firstly. Almonds are good for brain development. Creatine can match that. So it's insane, definitely. And that's what they've just discovered now. There's a massive movement.
And then the quantity of how much would you suggest on a daily basis? Or for general, 20 years old, 30-year-old people that are training currently?
Just 5 grams of creatine monohydrate. That's it. And if you do have a high creatinine count and you're concerned about that, you could take creatine hydrochloride, which will give you less creatinine turnover.
Okay.
Not that would be an issue or it's a problem in any case. It's just obviously people don't like to see those creatinine numbers high on their blood work. For me, it might be a little bit elevated. I wouldn't be too concerned.
Is there something that a doctor can test to test how much creatine you have? Or
yeah, they'll do a creatinine test. Yeah. So creatinine is basically just the breakdown of muscle tissue. So people that generally train in the gym, like myself, will have a higher creatinine count. And even if somebody is not training in the gym, but they're supplementing with creatine, they'll have a higher creatinine count as well. So if you're training and you're taking creatine, for sure you're going to have a higher creatinine level. That's okay, because there are variables that are causing that. If you're not training, you have extremely high creatinine count, then yes, there's reasons for concern.
But reasons for concern, because you're saying it's high now because of what? Just because of what? As the body's breaking down the muscle.
Yeah, so 100%, but there could be, especially in the elderly people, because you're automatically breaking muscle down. So there's elevated amounts of creatinine, but then also there's conditions like kidney disease, right? You've got chronic kidney disease, and you've got stages in that. You've got stage 1, 2, 3, and it goes down to 4. And then each stage will be a number on your GFR, and that GFR will be indicative of how much creatinine you have in your body. So generally, you want to make sure that it's at a safe number. And if it's not, like with myself, find out what the reasons are for that number being elevated. So in my case,
and on your blood works, there will be limitations, or it will show you this is the normal range of where it should be. And you're aiming for that being. It needs to be in that sweet spot.
It needs to be in the sweet spot, but your doctors generally will do a GFR test, which is a glomerular filtration rate. And that's what I do my readings off, just to see where it is. A very quick test. It's a cheaper test as well. But a true kidney test to see what your kidney function is like, that's called a cystatin C test. So if there's really reasons to be concerned, do a cystatin C test first. And most likely you'll see most of the time that even if you have a low GFR, that the cystatin C is normal. And then okay, I've got nothing to worry about. So there is actually a better blood panel to do.
And is that something that you go to the doctor for? Is that something you pitch up to the doctor? Just listen, doctor, I want to have these tests done or checked or...
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'll run that too for you.
Okay, 100%. Okay, now let's delve into the protein side of things. How much? How do you determine it? Is there good protein? Is there bad protein? Is it all about meat? Is it, can you take supplements or?
Yeah. So again, it's very individual. So internationally, the amount of protein that they're given for a person is not really that high. So I normally work with 1.6 grams of protein per kilogram of weight for females, and then 2.2 grams of protein per kilogram of weight for males.
And that's not dependent on your goal that you have, obviously.
So that would be an average. That was like, this is protein requirement for you. So if you're a bodybuilder, it'll go anything from 2.2 to 3.3, depending on your weight, depending on what division we're going into, if you want to build muscle. So generally for a male, if we're maintaining, I'll keep it at 2.2. If we're building up, I'll take it up to about 2.6. And most of the time, 2.6, even for a pro bodybuilder, is more than enough to gain that muscle. Overseas, there's like Milos Sarcev is a pro. He's done like 72 pro shows, and he's probably one of the best coaches in the world. He'll take the protein level up to about 4 grams. And that's
so that's 4 grams per kilogram of body weight.
Yeah. So
for how much does he weigh, more or less?
Well, I don't know what Milos weighs, but I can tell you now that often a 100-kilogram bodybuilder will be eating about 350, 400 grams of protein per day. Just to meet the protein requirements for you to build muscle. But those guys are obviously massive and they're big. But coming back to wellness and lifestyle, again, it depends on the client. You ask which proteins are good for you, which proteins are bad for you. Again, it's the protein load on the kidneys that you want to look at. So for instance, red meat, if you have somebody that has got CKD, chronic kidney disease, and they have a very low filtration rate, maybe you don't want to give them red meat. We might want to go to tilapia, which is a fish, or maybe plant-based protein, which is a lot easier for the kidneys to digest, and it's got a very little load on the kidneys too. So again, it depends on the client itself. And then some clients don't like chicken, some clients don't like ostrich, some clients don't like beef. So you need to kind of, give them what they like and allow them that flexibility in their dieting, because sometimes if it lacks flexibility, they're not going to stay on the program.
And then basically calculate how much protein they need. So you mentioned something about, some people taking 300 grams or 400 grams. So you break it up into your meal. So you'll have maybe 50 grams in the morning and then later. And then how do you break it up? Is it with each meal?
Yeah. So
equivalent?
Each meal, yeah. So it determines how many meals you're going to be eating a day. So for wellness clients, I generally just stick it the same throughout the day. So if it's, let's say, 250 protein that they have to get in, I'll divide it by 5, and there'll be 50 grams per meal for 5 meals. If it's an athlete of mine that's going to be competing, there's a certain level of protein I'll have them having before their workout. pre-workout, and then I'll give them a certain amount of protein post-workout. And those protein amounts are generally higher than the rest of the day because the requirement for protein during those sessions are going to go up.
Okay, no, excellent, sure. Now you've mentioned all the physique shows that you've been involved with, and all of that, all these bodybuilding shows. You can guide me on that. Obviously you've built up quite a reputation there as being one of the top coaches, I think, in the country, basically, which is all obviously phenomenal. Dietary wise for these athletes, as you've mentioned, what do they also? Is it do you eat anything before the shows? How do you sort of taper it down? I've seen a lot of these guys also after the shows, they grab overseas, I've seen the guys grab a pizza afterwards because they're so hungry and stuff. Do they just take me just to the arc of, do they, the first 4 weeks they eat a lot, and then they eat less, and then they start tapering down, or is it then just water before the shows? Or just give me some sort of just a journey of what these athletes go through, just a quick brief summary of
So you're trying to maybe divulge all my secrets here. So
no, no, I'm joking. That's need to know, but I'll give you the basics. You don't need, just the basics. For us now, we're not exposed to that industry. We're not in that, sort of field. Just give us a snapshot of you being involved there.
Okay, so basically, you need to be conditioned already going into the show. So it's not like your last week is going to save you. Your last week can make a substantial difference in your physique, dependent on how you're coming into the show. So if you're at 93% of your physique, I can promise you peak week will only improve you 3% or 4%, which will put you on potentially 97%, which is great. But if you're coming in at 63%, 67% is not going to make much of a difference.
Just going what physique-wise?
Physique-wise.
Like
the conditioning of your health. So if you're coming in...
Who determines that? You?
I determine that. Yeah. I determine. You're not there, you're not standing. 10 days out, you're out of sight. I've told a lot of people, look, you're not standing. Disappointment for them, but afterwards they come and they say thank you because they realize they weren't at their best. And so
they weren't ready for the show.
Yeah. And because I've worked with so many athletes for such a long time, I know when they're at their best. So I say to them, if you're not at your best, you're not standing. So they really push during their prep. And then that last week, generally what I'll do is I'll deplete them of glycogen, carbohydrates, like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. In that depletion, the body's thinking like, where's your carbohydrates? Like, why don't we have carbs in the body? And there's a specific enzyme in the muscle tissue called glycogen synthase, which then the body says, well, maybe we're not secreting enough glycogen synthase to absorb the carbs. So your body releases a lot of this glycogen synthase. And after day 3, that level is at its highest. Okay, day 4, it starts tapering down, and day 5, it starts tapering down even more. So you want to grab it when the glycogen synthase is at its worst, at its highest at day 3. So day 4, I will then carb my athletes up, and day 5, I'll carb my athletes up while the glycogen synthase is at its highest. And it actually you get super composition in that muscle tissue where it's holding about 20% more carbohydrates than it usually can. And that's where they come up with that muscle looks pops, or it looks like it's nice and round. That's when you've got that protocol down to a T with the water that you're taking in, and then you're dropping your water as well. Depending on what the coaches normally do, I have a normal amount of water right through, and then the day before the show, I'll cut some water, depending on their conditioning. And then with the carbohydrates coming into the body, it gives that pop, and then the dehydration of the water under the skin disappearing really gives you that cartoonish look which you guys want to have on stage.
So these shows, it's probably very intimidating, standing there in front of everybody, having to show off your bodies and stuff. Is there sort of a mental component also to it? How do you get the confidence? But I suppose it's obviously these athletes, if you trained hard, you're obviously confident in going on stage and showing off what you've done behind the curtains, basically.
So I find generally, when you look like a Greek god, your confidence is a lot higher. But still, there are some people that just lack that stage confidence, and when they're just shy, irrespective of what they look like. So I normally start posing with them about 12 weeks before the show. So by the time we get there, they know exactly what they should be doing on stage. Whether they can apply that or not is completely determined on them. Mental aspects for the amateurs, not really that high. There's not really that much at stake. For my professional athletes that go overseas and compete abroad in pro shows, there's a lot more at stake. They've got sponsors, they've got supplement brands, they've got clothing brands, they've got food companies sponsoring.
So there's a lot more pressure.
So there's a lot more pressure for them. And yeah, there is definitely a mental aspect to that too. But I did a life coaching diploma in 2013 or 2014. And that helped me a lot approaching that mental aspect and understanding the dynamics of, when it comes to the psychology behind what they're experiencing, what they're feeling, especially when it turns out that the show becomes a disappointment for them. I mean, I just had an athlete now getting ready for a show in Amsterdam, only to get the invoice from the travel agent, finding out that he's about 20,000 Rand short of the show. So we had to cancel that show, and now we've moved him on to the 21st of September, which is in China. So he took all the money that he had already gathered through Back of Buddy and stuff, and he paid for the entire show already in China. It's far cheaper than what Europe was during that time period. That was about 3-4 weeks ago. It was supposed to be, I think, the 26th or 27th of June. So during that time period, apparently there's Wimbledon, there's this, there's that. So flights there and back was just very, very expensive. So that was a bit of a mental break for him, and I kind of had to get him up again after that. And then when I did, his car, just gave in. So, it does become quite challenging to work with people, especially when it comes to the psychological component of them.
Sure. Let's delve a little bit more into the eating habits. Are there any common eating habits you try to help clients unlearn for better energy and balance?
I don't think necessarily for better energy and balance. I think the high sugary foods and the sugary drinks for sure, because there's a lot less insulin spikes that you'll have if you're putting them on a proper meal plan. If you compare that to them having candy bars, chocolates, or soda pops, that's got a whole lot of sugar in, which obviously those spikes can cause you to dip a lot in energy. But I'm going to refer you more back to the habits that you've been speaking about now. And I found that a lot of times people just snack because they can snack during the day. When they're at a desk and they've got a chocolate around, or they're at home after 6 o'clock, they're in front of the TV, they'll go grab onto some chips or they'll grab onto some chocolates. And that's where I come in and I change that around. So a lot of the options I give them there would rather be like unflavored popcorn. I'll give them dark chocolate, like either 80% or higher, sugar-free jelly I've put in there too. And those kind of like help quite a lot. And if it doesn't, then I'll get them using some supplements. A lot of times I do chromium because I feel a sugar craving is generally due to protein deficiency and a mineral deficiency. And then the mineral that you are deficient in is generally chromium. So if you supplement with chromium, generally those cravings go away.
So that's a supplement you can find also from the pharmacy.
At the like Skim or Easy, it's easy to get. Yeah, that's chromium. Otherwise, there's another product called Hoodia, which is an extract from a cactus plant. And the Hoodia is also very, very potent in helping with sugar cravings and even appetite itself. And these are all natural things. You don't have to go and get a GLP-1 like a semaglutide or Ozempic, which is now taken stored worldwide, let alone the retatrutides and everything else they brought in after that. A much healthier way to approach things too.
Oh, that's awesome. So what's the signs that you look for to see if a client is overtraining or undertraining or under recovering? Basically, they're not ready.
Okay, so
so sort of they're overtraining. What's the signs that you normally first look at?
So firstly, pain. So muscle pain. They're not recovering from their sessions. They soar into the next sessions. I'd say fatigue. You can see also by their demeanor, they're coming in, how they're pushing. And then what would be the third, if I had to say recovery? I'd say I'd probably look at that the most, as variables on whether they're recovering enough. And then also their output. So when they're training during the session, if they did a lot heavier 2 weeks ago, for the last four weeks, they pushed heavier weights than today, I'd say, look, I mean, you're not pushing as hard as you have. And I had that happen actually yesterday. I had a client come in the morning and was pushing really weight, sorry for the word, but I looked at his weights and I said to him, look, what happened? He said, no, last night he slept from 10 to 12 and he wasn't able to go back to bed again. He was just awake the whole evening, and his food intake wasn't great the previous day too. So that's another thing I will look at. So it's sleep, food intake, and basically water too, because water indicates how much hydration you have. And if you're dehydrated, you're also not going to be very strong, because a muscle that's dehydrated, it's not a very strong muscle. Firstly, you're not going to get a lot of output out of it, and you're not going to get a lot of endurance out of a muscle that's dehydrated. So I think hydration will also be a very important factor to look at when it comes to recovery.
Okay, then lastly, if someone's listening today, what would you have the biggest, what would make the biggest impact in their lifestyle, in the well-being? What would you suggest to them to change today, basically, if they could? That one thing you would suggest.
So I don't think it's just one thing that you could mention, to be honest. But if I had to say what's the one thing that you should do to improve your wellness, I would say sleep. It's so, so important, really. I don't think people can put enough emphasis on it. And when I listen to podcasts and I listen to like the Andrew Hubermans, the Dave Sinclairs, Dave Asprey's, they just emphasize on how important sleep actually is. And also your architecture of sleep, like how well you're sleeping. For instance, a lot of people say they can drink coffee just before they go to bed and they will sleep. You're not sleeping well because you're drinking the central nervous stimulant. So while you're sleeping, number one, your REM sleep, your deep sleep is going to be compromised. You might not spend as much time in deep sleep. How dark your room is also important. So the darker your room is, the better, because the more melatonin you can produce, and melatonin makes you sleep. Then there's an ideal room temperature of 18 degrees that you want to adhere to. Try and keep that going. That is also ideal for sleeping. And then there's a 3-2-1 rule. So 3 hours before you go to sleep, you don't really want to eat anymore. 2 hours before you sleep, you don't want to drink any more water. And then 1 hour before you go to bed, you want to get off all your phones and have no exposure to blue light. So you'll get off your screens, maybe grab a book, or maybe keep yourself busy in another way. But that generally will improve your sleep architecture itself and how well you're sleeping. But I think that to me is really the number one thing. Yeah.
Okay, I think with that being said, I think that brings us to the end of our podcast for today. Thank you so much, Warren. I think there's a lot of information that our listeners are going to walk away with. So, yeah, I really appreciate it. And, yeah, looking forward to the next one. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Kobese.
Thanks.